Okay, so welcome to our module on cutting a corporate video. This is going to be an ad for a real-world medical recruitment company. It's a really exciting project, and I'm really proud to be able to share this one with you because it's a good one. So let's start by taking a look at the video itself. It's a 3-minute, roughly, give or take, ad video for a rapidly growing recruitment firm that specializes in medical technology. It includes 4 contributors, that's 4 people who we are interviewing. We will need to build a coherent narrative out of interview from 4 different people who are all in different positions at the company. We're going to produce a full video edit and an audio pass, as well as take a look at some lower thirds as well. We're going to use simple lower thirds, the pre-made stuff in DaVinci Resolve. We're not going to go into Fusion to build graphics here. So we have a proper brief for this project. Now, the brief for a project like this is super important. You'll arrive at the brief through dialogue with your client or through dialogue with your director, depending on what position you have on the project. And this really directs what we're going to be doing here. This is extremely important. If we're not on brief, we're not doing a good job. So let's go through what has to be included in this video. So it's a short advertisement for new talent. Projectus is growing fast and wants to employ more people in the relevant field. They are looking for a broad range of applicants, but ranging from relative beginners to advanced professionals. Now, there are some really key points to get across in this video. Now, I've sanitized this brief quite a lot to make the lesson a bit easier for everyone involved. We are, of course, beginning to learn editing here. We're not advanced. So what I've done is I've organized these points essentially in the order in which they will appear in our edit, just to make things easier to follow along for now. So Projectus is a smaller niche business with a strong specialism in medical technology. This saves lives and has a positive impact. Will leave our big medical company politics at the door for this project. A smaller company means more personal treatment of its team. And of particular note with this client is Jake, who's the boss, does not like the term employee. So we want to try and edit around anybody using the term employee for as much as we are able. We don't want to include that word in there if we can avoid it. Projectus is an international company, so fluency in multiple languages is strongly desired, as team members, and that's not employees, remember, are required to travel internationally and deal with clients on site as well as at a distance. Now, we're just going to keep an eye out for this in our interview. I know that we have at least 2 contributors that talk about this. We just need to make a choice as to which one we prefer. Projectus offers an uncapped commission running from 30 to 50%, which is extremely high in this industry. This is a strong selling point to new talent. Team members are also offered share options in the company from day one. So there's basically a proportion of money from each deal that goes straight into the team member's bank account, and it's a very high proportion relative to other recruitment firms. This is really important. We have to make sure that this is kind of front and center here because it's what makes working at Projectus very desirable for new talent. Also, they have an option to own shares in a rapidly growing company, which is also very attractive. So this is kind of the big financial impetus to work here. We do have to give some focus to this one. We need to choose who introduces this idea and then who elaborates on it. It's probably best to have the boss introduce the idea and then have another team member elaborate on it afterwards. We are going to give deference to the boss, who is called Jake, who we will come across in the next few videos when we start looking at the select reels that we are going to use. Projectus offers a great deal of professional and personal support to its team members. A business and life coach visit every 2 weeks to give mentoring to team members. This is an extremely high pressure environment, and so supporting staff and supporting team members is very important as well. Recruitment has a reputation for extremely high staff turnover, and so Projectus want to try and address that by emphasizing the support they give to their new hire and their established team members as well. So this one is important. We probably want to have someone who isn't the boss talking about this, because it's all well and good the boss saying, yeah, we do this, but we want to hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. We want to hear this point coming from an employee who has been supported in this way. Maybe we can do the same thing as last time. Maybe the boss can introduce this idea, but I want some anecdote about this here. I want someone who actually uses this service to say, yeah, this is really good, because that adds a much greater sense of credibility to the idea than just the boss saying, yes, we do this. Projectus has what they call their Accelerate scheme, a program that details specific targets to team members that, if met, result in guaranteed pay rises and or promotions. This is a big deal. So the point about joining up at Projectus is that you have a trajectory, you know where your career is going, and they really want to make that clear. And they want to sell it as a longer term investment as well. It's not uncommon for people to work across different recruitment firms in shorter bursts. Like I said, the recruitment industry, at least in the UK, is infamous for a very high personnel turnover within companies like this. So again, focusing on this Accelerate scheme really emphasizes that it's a sustainable and long-term career choice here, that we're not going to just work here for 6 months, get burnt out and then move on. That's a big concern with companies like this. And last but not least is we're not trying to drive away people who aren't already specialized. Projectus has a big training platform. They offer a lot of staff training and a lot of staff support. So specialist medical knowledge is not required for new hire. There is an expectation that you take on that specialism and that you learn those things as you work up within Projectus. And we need to make that clear as well, that there is a specialism here and that that's where your focus is going to go should you work there. So, but that you're not being driven away if you don't already have it, that training is there. So that's another thing to make a big focus in this video as well. So I have copy-pasted this brief into a simple PDF that you can download alongside this lecture. I strongly recommend that you do that so that you always have your brief on hand. You do not want to deviate from the brief. This is the client's video. Okay, this is different. This is no longer subjective, creative, oh, this is effective drama. This is a commissioned film, and so the thinking behind it is completely different. Client gets what client wants, because they are the one who's essentially just buying the entire film from the ground up. This is a commissioned film. So if we go off brief, we're not delivering what our client wants, and that's a problem, because if we don't deliver what the client wants, they won't pay. So again, this is not about creative sensibilities. This is about delivering what the client has specified according to this brief. I cannot stress that enough. In real jobs, there'll be a lot of dialogue between you and the client, going back and forth. But what we'll do in this lesson is we're going to take a look at building select reels with the cut panel and then building a coherent narrative out of all of those different interviews using a parallel edit technique that we will then use in the edit panel to perform the actual edit. So go ahead and download this brief, super important. Make sure you have it to hand whilst editing, because like I said, the brief should be in your mind at all times when doing this. And click on through to the next lecture. Right, before we get started on this, I just want to explain a very particular issue I had whilst recording these lectures. I've recently had a new workstation, and to my chagrin, I've found out that it has all kinds of software and hardware problems, resource conflicts, driver conflicts, particularly with USB devices for some reason. So I've actually had a very hard time keeping Resolve stable enough to record. I eventually got it to work, but One issue that has Right, before we get started on this, I just want to explain a very particular issue I had whilst recording these lectures. I've recently had a new workstation, and to my chagrin, I've found out that it has all kinds of software and hardware problems, resource conflicts, driver conflicts, particularly with USB devices for some reason. So I've actually had a very hard time keeping Resolve stable enough to record. I eventually got it to work, but one issue that has persisted is that the audio drifts out of sync with the video when I'm recording with Camtasia. Now, just to make this absolutely clear, that is a Camtasia problem, not a Resolve problem. It only affects the lecture recordings I've made with Camtasia. It does not affect the project you have in Resolve at all. It is a problem on my end. That's all. I have had to go through all of my lecture recordings for this module and manually sync the system audio back up with the recorded video with the screen capture. It's one of the reasons why I've had quite a few delays working on this module. Now, I believe that it's all fine. I stand by my work, and I would not put this work up here if I did not believe that it was of a deliverable standard. That being said, if you find it to be unacceptable, please let me know. I can try to sync it a bit closer. I think I've gotten it about as close as I can reasonably get it using Camtasia to sync audio, because Camtasia has very limited video and audio editing tools. So I just want to make sure that that is understood before we proceed with this module. And with that out of the way, let's get on with this. Okay, in this exercise, we're going to look at select reels. We're going to look at how to build one, we're going to look at the structure of a basic select reel, and then in the next exercise, we're going to start using it to build our first pass, our kind of dialogue backbone for this project, before we then go into things like adding cutaways and animations and doing audio work and lower thirds. So first, let's take a look at the project that I have prepared for you for this module. In the master bin, there are two bins, one for contributors, and a contributor is simply someone who we have interviewed for our project, whether that be for an ad, corporate communication, testimonial, or even documentary. We tend to use the blanket term contributor for a person that we interview in this way. There are 5 folders here. We have 4 contributors plus an extra folder for cutaways. Now we have Bernard, Ella, Jake, and Sarah. Jake is the boss, he has the most to say, and that's why I've left his select reel for this exercise. It gives us a good amount of practice for this project. Now I want you to have your brief to hand whilst doing this, because it does outline what we should be including, and it lets us know when we're beginning to deviate from the point, if we're going to kind of spread out a bit and look at other less important things in this project. So first, let's take a proper look at a select reel. I'm going to look at this example in the edit panel because it's an easier interface to read than the cut panel. If you're actually reviewing an edit, the cut panel is not a good place to do that. So let's take a look at this simple select reel that I've prepared for us here. This is me going through all of the different bits of interview with Bernard. We've got a whole interview up here, and then we have all of these little bits and clips down here that I've cut up and put down on the timeline. What I've done is I've reviewed this material. Let's take a look at this.
Personally, myself, I was able to set a target to pay for a wedding, achieve that. I'll set myself a target next year and achieve it as well.
One thing you might notice is that the audio appears out of sync on this recording. That is a machine issue I've had with a brand new workstation. It is perfectly in sync in the project that you have and in the project that I have. That is Camtasia being a little bit odd. I'll see if I can fix that for later videos. But for now, we're okay. So let's say I like this excerpt. I would just put this down on the timeline and put a marker around it. I've created duration markers here, and each one, if I mouse over it or double click, I can see the line that Bernard is delivering. And so when it comes to putting my edit together, I can just mouse over this and I can see what I've got. Within these ranges, I have either multiple takes or the same or different takes from different angles. So let's take a look at these two cuts here.
Often I'll go for a beer or a coffee with candidates and clients. Often I'll go for either a beer or a coffee with both clients and candidates to really understand their needs.
Now, organizing it like this lets me review multiple takes side by side very, very quickly. And I wish I could open this timeline up in the cut panel, because that would be a really nice way to work, but sadly we cannot. That's, in my opinion, one of the big things missing from the cut panel. But once I've gone through and organized my selects in this way, actually reviewing multiple takes or reviewing different angles of the same take becomes very, very easy. I just have to play. Let's do this again.
We're an international business here at Projectus. I travel a lot to different conferences, to different client meetings. I've got to meet all my clients to make sure I really understand their recruitment needs. We're an international business. I do a lot of traveling. I go over to different conferences and different meetings to different clients across Europe. It's a great way to get in front of people and really understand exactly what their recruitment needs are. We're an international business here, and we like to travel, meet all of our customers. We get over to Europe, we go to different conferences, and equally go to meet them at their facilities. We're an international business here, and we like to travel, meet all of our customers. We get over to Europe, we go to different...
And you get the idea, but this is a very, very quick and efficient way to review several different takes or review several different angles and choose what we think is the best for our edit. And in doing so, I've trimmed out the stuff I don't feel is relevant to our brief. A select reel is, well, selected material, hence the name. It's the stuff that we think we want to work with. Now, the truth is, we are unlikely to get absolutely everything we're going to use in our edit whilst doing this. So there's a certain amount of going back and scrubbing through rushes again as well. But once we've done this, we can much more easily make executive decisions on what cut we want to use where, basically, because it's much easier to go through and review all of these things. So every time I've done this, I've made the duration marker and I've put a bit of information in there so I can quickly tell which part is what. And this is exactly what we're going to do with Jake. We're going to cut a select reel for Jake in the course of this exercise. So first I want to open up Jake's folder. In fact, first I want to go to the cut panel, because we will do this in the cut panel. I want to make sure that I am in Jake's folder. So in the upper left, I'll click on this icon and then make sure that Jake, brackets, the boss, his bin is selected. And here is all of Jake's interview material. Now we have mids which have been split up into discrete segments because of the camera that was being used. We have a full interview on a close-up which was shot on a pocket camera which doesn't segment its files. And we also have the audio recordings. Now I've already synced all the audio in this project for you. You don't have to worry about that. So we're going to open up the empty timeline for Jake's selects. And we can do that very easily by going up to the drop-down menu above the viewer or the monitor here, where it currently says Bernard Selects, clicking on the chevron, and we can just choose Jake Selects. And now we're in the empty timeline for Jake's interview. So now it falls to us to start reviewing all of the material we've got. Now, the source tape actually makes that quite painless. Remember, in the upper left of the monitor, we have the source tape icon. I will click this, and now this makes skimming through all of my interview excerpts that little bit easier, because I can just play them back to back. And what we basically need to do is we need to review all of this material and just pick out the bits that we like. Now we can play it at double speed if we like, provided we can pick out the words. Jake does speak fairly quickly, not unlike myself, so at double speed it might be a little difficult to understand. But we've only got about 13 minutes of rush here, plus the end part here, the full take, so it's not going to take that long. The only way to do this is to get started, so I will begin playing. Now, One thing I want to make absolutely clear to you is that you're not working with footage of professional actors this time. These people aren't used to presenting to camera. The truth is, in their entire lives, they might present to camera in this way maybe once or twice. It's not something that they do. There is a lot of coaching from the director, Adam, a good friend and client of mine, from off screen, essentially feeding them lines and getting them to deliver material that we will be able to use in this video. This is not a documentary. Okay, this is not a documentary. It is an ad. It is meant to be to make it look as attractive as possible whilst not overtly lying, basically. So it's not just making stuff up, but it is trying to present things in their best light. Whereas a documentarian should not have that kind of bias. That would be a big difference between corporate video ads and documentary. So we're going to see a lot of failed lines. We're going to see a lot of laughing. We're going to see a lot of awkwardness and silence as people think through what they want to say, and a lot of stumbling. And we're going to hear a lot of Adam's off-screen voice, essentially coaching them into delivering usable lines. That is what we should expect to see here. It might be shocking to some of you who've never seen an ad edit before it's been performed to see exactly what the raw material looks like. So let's just keep going.
You'll be working in a market that helps to save lives every single day, working with groundbreaking technology.
That's better actually working because it's,
Yeah.
working. Yeah, it's good. All those were good, weren't they? Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we've got a decent line. We might have to cut a hesitation out of it and hide that with some cutaways later on, but I'm going to go ahead and put that down onto my timeline.
Okay, one second. You'll be working in a market that helps to save lives every single day, working with groundbreaking technology.
So that's a good line to put in our advert. It's aspirational, it's positive, it makes everything sound important, and it just attracts you to working here. You'll be making a difference working here in medical technology. So I'm just going to insert that down here. I'm going to go forwards a bit to see if we get more deliveries of this line, and if we don't, I will place a marker over this cut.
That's better actually working because it's, working. Yeah, it's good. All those were good, weren't they? Yeah. Fine. No, just thinking, I mean, yeah, thinking about things. All right. Now we're going to talk about benefits working with us.